This could be one of the most exciting new power tools we've seen in years. This is the Kreg Cordless Track Saw. Kreg is no stranger to track saws. They've had their corded track saw on the market for a very long time. Now, they've just released the Kreg Cordless Track Saw. We're going to go over all the features of this new track saw. There's 3 new features that the old saw doesn't have. We're also going to put this through the test cutting hardwoods, plywoods, and see how it performs. And we'll also compare it to the old model and see how it stacks up. Kreg did send this over for review. If you want to check one out for yourself, there'll be a link in the description, the pinned comment, as well as that shop button right here on YouTube. And of course, you can scan the QR code for my TV viewers. Now, let's check this thing out. Just a little while ago, Kreg released some of the most exciting power tools we've seen in decades, brand new from a company that's not known for power tools, and they're coming out of the gate hot, including their new pocket hole machine, which there is a full review on the channel you can check out. I'll link to after this video, but you're going to want to stick around to see this, the new Kreg track saw. This new cordless track saw is running on the Kreg Blue Ion battery platform. It's a 20-volt platform, brand new from Kreg. They've never had cordless tools until now, and I think they're doing a really good job out of the gate with a bunch of options because they have a router, they have track saws, they have a pocket hole joiner, which nobody else has, as well as drills and drivers and a lot of other tool options for you to get started with. And what makes Kreg specifically unique is the fact that all of these tools are specifically geared and made for woodworkers. And a lot of other tool companies are not doing that because they're making their tools for the masses. In other words, the person who wants to do DIY projects, but also the weekend woodworker, but also the homeowner. So everybody's kind of trying to be included, where Kreg is really targeting and making specific tools for woodworkers, like the pocket hole joiner and the cordless track saw. Now, I've been a fan of Kreg track saws for a very long time. It was one of the first track saws I ever tried, and it's always been a true performer. Now, we're going to see if this performs as well as the corded track saw, and then also the 3 new features that this one provides that the other one don't. Not to bury the lead, but the first feature this one has that the other one don't is the fact that it's cordless. So if you need that cordless convenience, this might be the way to go. In my initial testing, I was very impressed with the power and the performance of this, but we have not put that to the true test by cutting thicker hardwoods. I always like to cut this almost 2-inch thick piece of walnut to see how this performs, and we're going to find that out. But first, let's go over the features. Kreg has its own track, so you will need to use Kreg tracks. This Kreg track saw will not work on Milwaukee tracks or Festool tracks or Makita tracks, which are all interchangeable with each other, but the Kreg track is not. It is proprietary, which sometimes is a bad thing, but sometimes it's not. One thing I do like about their track is the fact that it's actually 63 inches long, which means I get plenty of room before the cut and after the cut cross-cutting on plywood. That's not something that all of them do. Festool, Milwaukee, and Makita all have 55-inch tracks, and it's like almost enough, but not quite enough to get started and finish the cut. It just feels a little like we need a little more there, and this gives us that. So I am proud of that. Now, when you do first get your track saw, you're going to make the first initial cut, and this blue piece of splinter guard across the end or on the end here will be cut. You will see blue shavings, and that is perfectly natural and just what it's meant to do because you're creating a 0 clearance insert with your blade. So don't freak out when you see the blue chips. Also, the little drop down splinter guard on the saw itself will also need to be trimmed to be a 0 clearance for the blade. It's all supposed to happen, so don't worry if you do see those shavings. Now, as stated, you'll be using the Blue Ion batteries from Kreg. At the time of launch, you can get a 4 amp or a 2 amp hour battery. I would recommend the 4 amp just because of the bigger capacity. You're going to be able to cut longer. The 2 amp will work just fine. It's just not going to have as much battery life. This is a true plunge saw, so you can actually make plunge cuts with this should you need to. There are some out there that you cannot. Ryobi, you can't do that because of the riving knife, the way it moves with the Ryobi. This one actually plunges out and under the blade, so you can actually use this as a plunge saw and it will do just perfectly fine. And speaking of the riving knife, this does have a riving knife to prevent that material from pinching on that blade, which is a good thing because not all track saws have that. Makita doesn't and a few others, but I do like to see this on there. This also has an anti-kickback switch on the bottom to prevent that kickback, and what that does is prevents that saw from moving backwards. It basically pinches the track or the guide rail on the backwards cut or on the backward movement so it doesn't get kicked back, but it will slide forward with ease. You can turn that off if you need to move it back on the track for any reason. And while on the track, you can adjust it to fit perfectly so it's a little snug, but not too snug, and it doesn't have any side-to-side movement. You want to dial this in on your track before you start using it. And the front and the back have these little adjustment knobs. Very easy to adjust. You just want it just snug. You don't want any lateral movement on your track. After you get it snug, you're good to go. As far as depth of cut as well as bevel cuts, you do get a full 2 1/8 inch cut depth here, so you can use this to cut 2-inch thick pieces of wood. So this is a really nice feature to have. I also like on the depth gauge that there is a 3/4 inch marking, so it's very easy to see where to position that depth stop right at 3/4 of an inch, because most of us are using these track saws to cut 3/4 inch plywood or to break down plywood. So I'm glad that they included that. And speaking of the depth adjustment, this is a single pole depth adjuster, but it slides very smoothly. There's some track saws on the market that have this type of a depth adjustment that just sticks, and it's very inconvenient and very frustrating when it just sticks and it won't move. This glides very easily. It's one of the better ones I've used. Then on the bevel adjustment, you do get -1 all the way to 47 degrees bevel, so you can bevel cut anything you need. There's a little switch right here on the bevel adjustment that will drop it down, and we'll go from 45 at the hard stop of 45 and let it go past that all the way to 47. To get to -1, there's actually 2 little switches, one on the rear of the base, one on the front of the base, that you will flip backwards or towards the back, and it'll allow it to go to -1. To make it back hard stop at 0, just flip them back. This cordless track saw is also variable speed from 1 all the way to 6, depending on the speed that you need. A lot of times you might want to dial that speed down for various reasons, but for most part, I just leave it on max power and rock on. It also has a blade change feature, so you can just flip the switch on the top to where you see that little wrench, and then when you plunge that down, it will actually lock into place so that you can access that arbor, and then there's an arbor lock button right on top too, so you can lock the arbor and change that blade when you need to, which is very convenient as far as it locking in place, because I think it was the Triton, maybe the Vivor, one of them didn't lock in place, and so you're trying to have to hold it in place, and like it's frustrating. But this one locks in place so you can easily get to that blade, which is always nice. As far as the build quality, the ergonomics, how this feels in the hand, if you're familiar with the corded version, it's very similar to that. As a matter of fact, they are on the same footprint. If you look at them side by side, they're nearly identical. There's a couple of things that are different, obviously. Of course, I think this is a better looking Kreg track saw. This bright silver with that blue logo looks fantastic versus the grayish looking with the white logo on the corded. I think this is just a better looking tool. And if you appreciate that kind of stuff, you'll like it. If you don't care, then throw some sawdust on it and rock on. We'll get into some direct comparisons, but the overall weight with a battery included, I think are very similar. We'll put them on a scale and figure it out, but they're very, this may actually be a little heavier, just seems like. The actual base is very similar too. I think this might be some type of different material versus the other one because of the way they look, the material, feel, and look of them. That one almost looks plastic coated, although it's not. It's some type of paint or finish they put on it. This one is bare metal, maybe magnesium or something, but it may just be aluminum. But it does look better in my opinion. But functionally, they're exactly the same. Before we put these through the test, let's compare them side by side and see what you're getting with each one of these models. If you're looking at the corded versus the cordless, I think a lot of people will probably be comparing this. Do I want to get into that battery platform? If you want the pocket hole jig or the pocket hole joiner, then it's probably a yes, depending on how they perform. Now, the corded track saw and the cordless track saw look almost identical. You set them side by side. Very similar footprint. Main differences is this does have a battery, this one does not. There are 3 major differences, one being that battery. The second is the cordless track saw is variable speed. When the original Kreg track saw come out, it was variable speed if my memory serves, but it does not. The newer versions do not have variable speed. And then the third major difference is this has a thin kerf blade, this has a full kerf blade on the corded one because of the power output needed and the efficiency. You put a thinner kerf on the cordless one, you're getting better efficiency and you don't have to have as much power to pull that whole full kerf blade, and that can be a benefit in various cases. But as far as the adjustments go, they're identical. Even the same scales are being used on the bevel as well as the depth of cut. The same flip switch to change the blades is here. The same arbor lock. There's a couple of minor cosmetic differences if you look. One's a little more gray, one's a little more silver, but overall they're very similar down to the base that even has a little notch if you want to use it off track for 0 degrees and even 45 degrees on both of these. Now, cutting plywood with this in the shop, just making several rips here, 0 issues, and you can see very clean. This is across the grain too. So you're getting really good clean cuts, 0 power issues at all. Goes right through it like a hot knife through butter. No issues at all, none. Cutting 3/4 inch plywood. This could be a perfect track saw for cutting plywoods. What about battery life? Let's take it outside, find out how much we can actually get on a 4 amp hour battery. I counted 48 4-foot cuts that I was able to make on a single battery charge. It's 192 feet on one single battery. I think that's really good battery life here. No complaints at all right there for battery life. Chris, remind us how many we had on the Milwaukee track saw. Was it in the 70s? So a few more, but that's on a 5 amp hour battery, so you get 1 amp hour more than this. Maybe it was a 6 amp. And also on a high output battery versus a standard battery from Kreg, you're getting comparable battery life, in my opinion, here at 192 feet. Almost 200 feet of cutting, no issues with battery life. Now when you put this thing to the hardwood test, which it challenges a lot of saws, especially cordless saws, because of the power output needed to cut through that 2-inch thick piece of walnut consistently on a pretty good long run there. So cutting 2-inch thick piece of walnut with the Kreg cordless 20-volt track saw, the first 2 feet was like a hot knife through butter. And then it stopped. I was like, what is going on? Did I overload it? Was I over pushing it? I tried it again and it's shut off again. It happened a few times, so I reached out to Kreg. I was like, hey, this thing's shutting off. Is this normal? And they said absolutely not. And so they actually sent me some videos of them cutting 2-inch thick pieces of walnut and popular back to back to back without any issues. So they overnighted me a brand new saw to try out, and the difference was night and day. This one's much more powerful. I didn't think this one was underpowered the first 2 feet, but this one you could tell was a lot more powerful, and it just zipped right through that 2-inch thick piece of walnut without any shut-off issues. I made multiple passes through 2-inch thick pieces of walnut to ensure that this isn't going to shut off. I had 0 issues. So I tried this one again. I thought, well, maybe it was an anomaly. Put a battery on there, got to going, and it shut off again. I'm going to send this back to Kreg for them to evaluate. They're going to look at the control board and all that. But what I think is going on, just my theory, is this has been damaged in some way. Maybe during shipping or something. I think the blade is slightly off. It's not going straight. And the reason I think that is, you can see some burning right at the top of the cut when it starts really bogging down right before it shuts off. There's a lot of burning right at the very top of that cut. And I think that blade is in a bind. It sounds like it's in a bind right before it cuts off. This one does not experience that, the new one they sent me. So moving forward, would I recommend this saw just because it had this one issue with this one saw? Yeah, I would. And the reason why is I've been using Kreg products since 2017. I have this Kreg K5. It's one of the first Kreg products I bought, and I broke it. And when I broke it, I reached out to Kreg because I was broke and I couldn't afford to buy another one. I was like, hey, I broke this piece, and it was part back here on the clamp part. I said, can you send me another one? And they did, no questions asked. They didn't ask for any money. They just sent the new part out, which I think was fantastic. And I've heard multiple people over the years having a similar experience with Kreg. So even if on the rare chance you get one that is somehow damaged or defective in some way, I have no doubt that they will take 100% care of you and make sure everything is right. They're just a stand-up company from what I've experienced over the years. All that said, I don't think there's a problem with the motor or the internals or anything like that. I think it's binding up somehow, and it could be from a drop or some other shipping issue, although they are well packaged. Overall, the initial launch of the cordless Kreg track saw has some benefits, obviously a couple of drawbacks in those thicker cuts, but if you're just going to use this for plywood, I don't think you're going to have any issues, especially if you're going to go ahead and pick up things like the new Kreg Rebel pocket hole joiner, maybe the router, jigsaws. Get into that cordless platform, this might be an option for you. If you want to check this out, link in the description, the pinned comment, scan the QR code, or even use the shop button here on YouTube for any of the saws you saw today. If you'd like to see a full review of the corded Kreg track saw, click that box right there. Click in that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. Go watch that video, see which one's right for your shop. Let me know what you think.